What is up, all you freaks and disasters? And by which I mean Americans of, you know, compassion, free thinking, open mindedness. Really, you're really the middle class, run of the mill folks who J.R. Tolkien celebrated. It's your guy, it's your boy, Nate Houseman, your guide to the 21st century, back after a long hiatus. Not really hiatus. I've just been working 3 different jobs the last several months and paying bills. But I'm here because it's July 18th, Saturday, and a lot's going on this month. America's birthday was July 4th. My birthday was July 5th. A new woke movie has come out, and it's probably the worst offender of them all. And President Trump has dropped details and evidence and receipts on election interference. And we're going to go over quite a bit of it because the theme of this video is Democrats are communists. We're going after the communists. The game is afoot. And we're ready for them. And a new phase of the war against tyranny has begun. So if you find this content valuable, please give it a like, a thumbs up, share it with your those you care about, and give me a subscription, whether it's on Rumble, YouTube, Odyssey, Kick, X, what have you. So we're going to open with this tweet by Brian Cates talking about The Odyssey by Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan is a celebrated director. He directed the Dark Knight trilogy, probably the best, Batman adaptation besides Michael Keaton. And everyone's wondering why he's pulling this bullshit inversion of one of the foundational literary works of Western civilization, The Odyssey by Homer. Let's read what Brian Cates says. I want you to envision something. It might be hard, but make a sincere effort. Picture hundreds of people who used to make quite good movies who have literally been coerced over the past 15 years into making increasingly absurd woke shit movies. I don't mean the top level people, the suits. I mean the actors, the directors, the writers, the people who got into that industry because they loved it and they wanted to tell creative stories. And many of these studios used to let them do that. But starting around 2010, the noticeable shift suddenly accelerated. The suits at the top implemented a woke culture from the top down. Was Hollywood always left since the 1960s? Yes, of course. But did they at least understand where the lines were? Even if they do overtly leftist films, they weren't absurd woke films that were guaranteed to lose money. And they were still making a fair number of great and compelling films alongside their message stuff. But around 2010, the shift happened. Shift happened behind the scenes. In 2016, that's when it came fully aware with Ghostbusters 2016. But around 2010, the shift happened, and the people further down suddenly noticed that they can't get funding for original stuff that isn't woke. Subtly or more overtly, they're getting their good projects canceled, and they're being showed this type of stuff is all we're doing now. Imagine you're someone that's been making great, compelling original films for 20 years, and all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're in a fucking straitjacket. The same top producers you need to keep working are turning down every one of your original projects while either strongly hinting to you or overtly telling you they want you to do woke shit movies. How long are you going to put up with that? Even leftist people in Hollywood understand over half the country is not leftist, and even less are woke. So for the past decade and a half, a lot of truly creative filmmakers, actors, writers, etc. have been essentially held hostage by the people at the top of their own industry who are telling them woke shit content is where it's now. They can't get their creative ideas made, and the only thing they're getting funding for is woke projects the studios are telling them to make. What's the solution? How do you get the straitjacket off? How do you lead an overt rebellion against the suits? Or do you destroy the woke Hollywood shit machine from the inside with a literal fucking Trojan horse of the most woke movie ever made? Does anybody understand the irony? Christopher Nolan wants to go back to being able to make the kinds of movies he used to make. This is Brian Cates saying this, not me. I mean, I'm open to the idea, but a lot of people aren't. Christopher Nolan wants to go back to being able to make the kind of movies he used to make. So do a lot of people in that town. The mistake people are making is thinking everyone in Hollywood is on this woke train to nowhere, happily going along with an agenda that's corrupting and destroying their careers. And it's not just woke Hollywood, it's like all across corporate America and even small businesses, because finance and investing and loans control everything. Capital, I mean, communists claim to hate capital, but they never talk about really the central banks and how they decide what kind of businesses or projects even are allowed to happen. The mistake people are making that everyone in Hollywood is on the woke train of nowhere, happily going along with an agenda that's corrupting and destroying their careers. It's not true. A lot of people in Hollywood are not happy about this. Rush Limbaugh said the most powerful tool to force the leftists into retreat is to take their own words and go all the way with it to the logical conclusion and show them how absurd their beliefs are. A creative team put its head together and came up with the most absurd woke shit movie of all time, taking the woke absurdities to 11 to 11. The reason The Odyssey was made by these people isn't to affirm or strengthen the Hollywood woke shit machine. The Odyssey was made to choke that machine to death as the entire world watches it happen. And once the woke Hollywood shit machine has choked to death on its own absurdity, these people in Hollywood will be able to go back to making kind of films they did before the woke mind virus fucked it all up. And don't misunderstand what I'm telling you. I'm not saying Matt Damon or Christopher Nolan or others involved here are closet conservatives or MAGA or something. I'm saying they're tired of living in the woke box the last 15 years, and they want to go back to making the kind of movies they used to be able to make. In this sense, The Odyssey is a message movie, but the general public is not who the message is intended for. Pissed off every talented people in Hollywood who've been laboring under their iron-fisted control of the woke suits are trolling those who force this on them. Oh, you want woke, do you? Gird your loins, assholes. We'll give you the most woke movie of all time. Choke on this, bitches. And a troll like this only works if you do it with a straight face. Mel Gibson, Sly Stallone, Jon Voight, Tom Cruise, and many others inside the Hollywood beast are doing great work. So, I guess this is Tom Cruise promoting The Odyssey. I haven't kept up with that. And I mentioned this. On a related note, you can't convince me America created rock music for stomp clap music at the same time Obama was elected. So a lot of what's happening is coming from the top down. People do not choose this. Woke movies bomb, and you can set your watch to it. Bud Light was destroyed by the Dylan Mulvaney ad. America did that to them. Target was wrecked for their transgender policies. Jaguar is wrecked for their woke advertising. The Democrats, the communists, and the left, but I repeat myself, do not have the backing of the mainstream of America or even the world. That's why I'm not worried about Democrats winning elections unless they fortify the elections. I mean, 2020 should have been the tip-off. So, in light of woke Hollywood fighting back and woke entertainment, I want to mention the sponsor of this video, myself. I'm writing a novel. It's called Murray and Riffman. It's a sci-fi mystery novel set in the year 2084, and I'll give you a preview. The year is 2084. Machines and artificial intelligence perform wonders in time-saving labor, empowering human beings to thrive. The fears of replacement were unfounded. Humanity has never been more free. However, new technology brings new types of crime. Matt Murray is a brilliant young private investigator, contracted by law enforcement and individual clients. He has just finished building Riffman, his own robotic assistant. And not a moment too soon, because the bizarre homicide with nationwide implication has occurred in their city. This could be Murray and Riffman's introduction to the big time, or the worst pop catastrophe since the Great Information War. So, I'm writing this novel and illustrating it using Grok AI. I'm using rough sketches, doing character designs, and letting AI enhance it. But otherwise, the text is all me. And you can pre-order this book by going to my website and clicking on this. And I also have a referral program. So if you're interested in spreading the word, helping to promote independent entertainment, the Iron Age, as Razorfist calls it, you can do your part and even get a little piece of the action. I offer affiliate links, so tell your friends. I will update you with progress on my book with illustrations, little previews here and there on my blog on thehouseman.net. So with that going, let's get to the meat of this. On July 4th, President Trump stated, "Communism is the enemy of free people everywhere. It is the enemy of the Constitution. Above all, it is the enemy of July 4th, 1776. So he said this at a speech on July 4th. He also talked about it at his Mount Rushmore speech on July 3rd. And he's calling the monster by its name. Actually, not the entire monster, just one of its tentacles. I've been talking, and a lot of people have been talking about the invisible enemy. You might call it the New World Order. You might call it the Illuminati. You might call it, the World Economic Forum. I call it Babylon. I call it the ancient enemy founded by Nimrod way back in Genesis that has persisted and been powered by demon worship since ancient times. The ancient city of Babylon was literally destroyed, but the system that it persists. And President Trump has opened a new front in this war. So let's go to this post by Abby Blue Eyes on X. She says, Robert Welch tells the story of what happened to America before it happened. Trump is literally combating every single thing mentioned in this clip. POTUS is a legend. So this is Robert Welch speaking in 1958. I don't have the sound. Excuse me while I take care of this, because I'm watching this on a different browser, and
plan, of course, part of that plan, of course, is to induce the gradual surrender of American sovereignty, piece by piece and step by step, to various international organizations, of which the United Nations is the outstanding but far from the only example. Now, here are the aims for the United States. 1, greatly expanded government spending for every conceivable means of getting rid of ever larger sums of American money as wastefully as possible. 2, higher and then much higher taxes. 3, an increasingly unbalanced budget despite the higher taxes. 4, wild inflation of our currency. 5, government controls of prices, wages, and materials, supposedly to combat inflation. 6, greatly increased socialistic controls over every operation of our economy and every activity of our daily lives. This is to be accompanied naturally and automatically by a correspondingly huge increase in the size of our bureaucracy and in both the cost and reach of our domestic government. 7, far more centralization of power in Washington and the practical elimination of our state lines. There is a many-faceted drive at work to have our state lines eventually mean no more within the nation than our county lines do now within the states. 8, the steady advance of federal aid to and control over our educational system, leading to complete federalization of our public education. 9, a constant hammering into the American consciousness of the horror of modern warfare, the beauties and the absolute necessity of peace. Peace always on communist terms, of course. And 10, the consequent willingness of the American people to allow the steps of appeasement by our government, which amount to a piecemeal surrender of the rest of the free world.
So, how much of what he described in 1958 has come true? Department of Education, almost completely federalized education across the country. You know, bureaucracy and taxes and government bloat certainly happened, thanks to LBJ, and really thanks to the Federal Reserve. Like I said, communists and socialists always whine about capitalism, but they never mention the central banks, the Federal Reserve, which tells me the rank and file don't have conscious thoughts of their own, and the leadership of the communists are frauds. They know which side of their they know who butters their bread, and that tells me communism isn't really an ideology. It's just a scam. It's a fraud. Now, we have a communist who took over the city of New York, Zoran Mamdani. He is both a communist and a Muslim, and I am past saying nice. I'm done saying nice things about Islam. Now, Clandestine says, I think Mamdani might end up being the best thing that ever happened to us. Why? Because he's openly collaborating with our enemies in wartime. He's paving the way for Trump to declare the Dems an unlawful enemy combatants, and that's the theme of this video more than anything else. The Dems are collaborating with our direct enemies in wartime, and that's not even mentioning aiding and abetting our enemies with constant stream of anti-American and pro-Islam mainstream media propaganda and disinformation. Also, the Dems refuse to enforce U.S. law and defend our borders, allowing our enemy insurgents to walk across our border. That's why I bought a Glock, and that's why I bought an AR-15, in which the Dems harbor their sanctuary cities. Well over 99% of people have no idea just how severe our situation is. This is a zero-sum game between the American people and the communist globalist insurgents seeking to overthrow this nation from within. And if anyone thinks Trump doesn't have the stones to do something about it, you are mistaken. The process is already long underway. Trump and the U.S. military have been setting the stage this entire time. Trump is going to save this nation, and he told us many times he's willing to use the full array of powers as commander-in-chief to do it. Bookmark this post. One day, the Dems will be officially labeled as unlawful enemy combatants, and we will try them as literal terrorists via military tribunal. This clip is from Kavanaugh hearing in 2018. So yeah, Lindsey Graham passed away, and everyone's got mixed feelings about him. He was a hawk. He wasn't necessarily a chicken hawk, but he was a neocon. But when the rubber hit the road, he did the right thing. He did the right thing. Let's listen to this little exchange here, because I think Graham was setting this was laying down the pavement.
So when somebody says post 9/11 that we've been at war, and it's called the war on terrorism, do you generally agree with that concept?
I do, Senator, because Congress passed the authorization.
By the way, this is Brett Kavanaugh's hearing to be appointed to the Supreme Court.
For use of military force, which is still in effect, and that was passed, of course, on September 14th, 2001, 3 days later.
Let's talk about the law in war. Is there a body of law called the law of armed conflict?
There is such a body, Senator.
Is there a body of law that's called basic criminal law?
Yes, Senator.
Are there differences between those two bodies of law?
Yes, Senator.
From an American citizen's point of view, do your constitutional rights follow you? If you're in Paris, does the Fourth Amendment protect you as an American from your own government?
From your own government, yes.
Okay. So, if you're in Afghanistan, do your constitutional rights protect you against your own government?
If you're an American in Afghanistan, you have constitutional rights as against the U.S. government.
Is there a long-standing...
That's long settled law.
Isn't there also a long-settled law that it goes back to the Eisentrager case? I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah. Johnson versus Eisentrager.
Right. That American citizens who collaborate with the enemy have considered enemy combatants.
They can be. They can be. They're sometimes criminally prosecuted, sometimes treated in the military.
Well, let's talk about can be. I think
under Supreme Court precedent.
Right. There's a Supreme Court decision that said that American citizens who collaborated with Nazi saboteurs were tried by the military. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I think a couple of them were executed.
Yeah.
It's worth noting that Lindsey Graham was a JAG before he was a politician.
So if anybody doubts, there's a long-standing history in this country that your constitutional rights follow you wherever you go, but you don't have a constitutional right to turn on your own government, collaborate with the enemy of the nation. You'll be treated differently. What's the name of the case, if you can recall, that reaffirmed the concept that you could hold one of our own as an enemy combatant if they were engaged in terrorist act?
So, what Senator Graham did in 2018, during Trump's first term, he was setting the stage for domestic enemies to be tried as enemy combatants. Now, we've seen so many judges override President Trump's domestic, executive orders when it comes to deporting terrorists, to arresting illegal aliens, to implementing tariffs to get us out of the tax slavery system. The judges, the civilian court system is compromised. It's totally taken over. I've said this before, and a lot of other people have said this before. In order to get justice against our enemies, against our domestic enemies, we have to establish that they are enemy combatants, that they are aiding and abetting foreign adversaries. And then that becomes the purview of military courts, military tribunals. And this video tells us that Trump and the White Hats were planning this for years. Now, moving on, Elena says, watch, Pelosi and Ilhan Omar stay silent as Mamdani-backed socialist victories shake the Democrat Party. So lots of socialists have won election primaries among the Democrats in New York. So I'm not surprised with this, because this is what the Democrats were all along, since at least FDR, if not earlier. But what's new is they're doing it openly. And really, Isaiah L. Carter says this is fundamentally and objectively true. He's responding to John D. McCurry Jr. There is no fundamental platform difference between Democrats and Democrat socialists. This new fake outrage from Democrats is a push to move Republican voters in blue states to vote Democrat. Strategy was already unveiled in November 2025 during New York City's mayoral primary. Isaiah L. Carter says this is fundamentally and objectively true. In fact, for a broader audience, let me put this in terms you can understand, ladies and gentlemen. 2 words. Abigail Spanberger, the supposed governor of Virginia. Need 2 more? Mikey Sherrill. Need 2 more? Barack Obama. I'll never forget that Barack Obama's childhood mentor was Frank Marshall Davis, a card-carrying communist, a card-carrying member of the Communist Party. His other mentors were Bill Ayers, a radical in New York and Chicago, and Jeremiah Wright, a minister of liberation theology, which is really a Soviet-backed, a KGB-created perversion of scripture. Adam Johnson, on topic of New York, says 38% of New York City residents are now foreign-born, up from 18% in 1970. An entirely new electorate has been imported. The reality of NYC is occurring across America. So what he's saying is Americans are a minority in New York City and have been for some years at this point. And what Biden accelerated was the importation of foreign invaders into America. for the purposes of election rigging, election fortification for one thing, but also to really dissolve our national structure. Lives of TikTok says, rest in peace, the Democratic Party. It is now the Muslim Socialist Party. Abolish police and ICE, unlimited third world migration and citizenship, property seizure, pro-Islamic terrorists, hatred for America. Our founding fathers are rolling in their graves. And people have been talking about the Red-Green Alliance because for some reason, communists / socialists / Democrats, even though they're atheists, are allying themselves with the religion called Islam. Although I don't like Islam or religion, they're just as much a scam as criminal organization as communists. But they share a common enemy. That is the God of Abraham. So, but we have laws in the books that allow us to go after communists. Clandestine says, fun fact. Let me open up. The Communist Control Act of 1954 was passed in federal law to combat the Communist Party of the United States. The CPUSA was an illegitimate party that was the arm of a foreign conspiracy seeking to overthrow the U.S. government. Sound familiar? That's what we are witnessing right now with the Democrat Party in the present-day United States. The DNC is no longer a legitimate U.S. political party. They never have been. The DNC is no longer a legitimate U.S. political party. These are unlawful enemy combatants pretending to be a political party with the intent to overthrow the United States government. They're not operating on behalf of the American people. They are part of a foreign conspiracy which is trying to infiltrate and subvert the United States from within. The DNC/left was the entry point for communism to reach the United States under the guise of progress. This is not a game. The Dems are quite literally enemies of the United States, trying to exterminate and replace the American people. And the only way this country prospers is if we expel this illegitimate party from our nation, exterminate this poisonous left-wing ideology from our society, and hold all the traitors to the false end of the law. And if YouTube doesn't like me saying this sort of thing, fine. I get more views on Rumble anyway. So, key provisions of this law. The findings of fact, Section 2. Congress declared that the CPUSA, through pretending to be a normal political party, was actually an instrumentality of a conspiracy to overthrow the government of the United States, functioned as an authoritarian dictatorship within a republic, demanding rights for itself while denying liberties to others, took orders secretly from foreign communist leaders rather than evolving policies democratically, posed a clear, present, and continuing danger to U.S. security. Therefore, the Communist Party should be outlawed. And I would say the Islam should be outlawed too. Elon Musk responding to Jesse Kelly here. They didn't just import voters, they imported judges too. Now you know why the communists brought in 20 million foreigners as fast as they could when Biden got installed. Yep. Judges are a big problem. And as if to drive the point home, Tom Fitton is posting this on X, reposting a Blaze post. A communist calls for the destruction of the United States of America. This is Rashida Tlaib, a supposed member of the U.S. Congress. This is going to be cringe. I'm gritting my teeth, but let's listen.
Look at this rooms, motherfuckers. We ain't going anywhere. Political structures that I have to work in, that we are surrounded by, was built on slavery and genocide and rape and oppression. Real change doesn't come from the cowards and warmongers in Congress. It comes from the streets. It comes from all of us mobilizing and seizing the power to resist and fight back. Gaza is the compass in this country. Now we're in Congress, and we're every corner of the United States. Look at this rooms, motherfuckers. We ain't going anywhere.
So she said Gaza is the compass. Gaza, the declared devout enemy of Israel. And we got a bunch of supposed conservatives whining and bitching about Israel and the Jews. So that tells me that, well, I mean, they can disagree on other things, but it tells me that the woke right are really Democrats in disguise. They're really communists in disguise. I mean, there's no difference. There's no more meaningful difference between communists and Nazis than there is between Coke and Pepsi. I said that to my dad after we saw Oppenheimer, another Chris Nolan film. But you get what she's saying? She's openly a supposed member of the U.S. Congress, the House of Representatives, openly lying about the origins of America and openly calling for subversion and alteration of our constitutional, system of government given to us by the founding fathers. We don't need to change this country. We need to restore the country. Now, Data Republican, moving on here, kind of going back to the Odyssey situation, Odyssey and wokeness in general. She says, read this article. DEI has only one purpose. It has nothing to do with social justice or equity. Every person carries a moral frame that precedes any training module. Conscience, faith, community. Romans chapter 2, verse 15 says, the law is written on the heart. DEI exists to replace it. The law written on the heart can also be called the laws of nature, which is invoked in the Declaration of Independence. C.S. Lewis wrote about the laws of nature in his book, Mere Christianity. Mere Christianity is a masterpiece, especially the first 5 chapters, because he definitively proves the existence of God and debunks atheism by calling on our own personal knowledge of right and wrong, of our conscience, of the law of nature. Going on, the end point is moral authority reassignment, away from God, family, country, and conscience, toward the NGO administrative complex. That's what the training was always for. Consultation transfer. The military was a top target because it had to be. She's referring to this article by Cynical Publius. Military depolitization hex in DEI. But really, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, which is a branch of ESG, which was imposed on corporations, on schools, on universities by the financial system, by BlackRock and all the other, money managers and institutions on Wall Street, was imposed on America from the top down. Just as it was in Hollywood, just as it was in your retail shopping center, just as it was in your workplace, just as it was in your school. Americans didn't vote for this. No country chooses communism. It comes in under false pretenses and it usurps power. So, in the past, I've talked about how the Communist Revolution in Russia, that's another thing. The Romanov family was murdered on this day in 1918, was it? I don't know. The Bolsheviks were trending on X. The Tsar's family was murdered on July 17th or 18th, and that communist revolution was funded by Germany during World War I, and also, I've heard rumors, it was also funded by Wall Street, by the bankers. So the bankers are not true capitalists. The bankers are not true Americans. They are enemy commands just as surely as the Democrats are. Now, we got to talk about Charlie Kirk because Tyler Robinson's not his trial, but his hearing is going on and blowing up all of the content, really dissolving all the content of Candace Owens. Clandestine says, so shortly after Charlie Kirk's 5-day preliminary hearing ends, we get word from the Trump State Department that Marco Rubio, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, is setting his sights on Antifa. Robinson had Antifa phrases carved into the bullet casings. Coincidence? How much was Antifa involved? Antifa is the terrorist wing of the communists in America. They are funded. They are not just an idea. They are terror cells in the model of Al-Qaeda. They're terrorist franchises, and they are full of transgender, gender identity, mental cases who were either sick in the head or they are made sick in the head by abuse and big pharma. But that's just another angle of attack. Candace Owens, a member of the woke right, in good standing, has been trying to discredit Tyler Robinson as the killer of Charlie Kirk, and when he definitely was. Now, was he put up? Was he put up to it by someone? Probably. Was he put up to it by Israel or whatever? Probably not. He was put up to it by Antifa and the deep state in this country. Captain Dreamer says, a leftist freak shot Charlie Kirk. He didn't shoot Tucker Carlson or Candace Owens. Why? Because Charlie was the most effective grassroots organizer for Trump and MAGA. Anyone earning cover for this is doing so to deflect blame from the left and support them. Exactly. Captain Dreamer just said more concisely than I just did. Awaken Outlaw says, let's expand this. Awaken Outlaw says, and don't forget about Antifa. Marco Rubio's big conference is underway in D.C. with leaders from 65 countries to address how to coordinate and take down left-wing terrorism worldwide, including vanilla ISIS, currently infecting humanity with their violent ideological garbage. That's happening in parallel to everything else. So, now, moving on to this, C3 is responding to Screwy Louie on X. Screwy Louie is responding to USAID. Remember that which got shut down last year by Doge? Originally, USAID was a slush fund invented in 1964 during the Cold War under the Johnson Doctrine, an election fund to prevent communist and socialist regimes in the Western Hemisphere, mainly Central and South America. Democrats abused and perverted USAID to elect socialist and communist regimes in the Western Hemisphere and radical Islamic regimes in Northwest Africa. This phenomenon isn't immediately apparent, but a map. And the dates, the elections shows a trend. So, South America 2023, mostly communist red. South America 2026, freedom is expanding. I would say that the socialists shot their bolt. They used up all their ammo when they stole Brazil for Lula da Silva. Everyone is making the connection between USAID and the end of socialism in Latin America. And that tells me we don't have to worry about the Democrats and Socialists winning elections here in this country unless they fortify or unless they have illicit funds. And C3 responds to this saying, question, if Elon is supposed to end world hunger with his own money in 1 year, why didn't USAID end world hunger with our money in 64 years? Weird, yeah. Because ending world hunger was just a cover story. Continuing with Elon Musk, he says, Elon Musk just posted AOC as an actor. He's 100% correct, and here's the proof. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was chosen to be in Congress by a Democrat casting call. She's a political actor that was picked out of 10,000 applicants. AOC's brother submitted her application, and she was chosen by the executive director of Justice Democrats out of 10,000 candidates. It's all on camera. There's even footage of AOC and Alexandra Rojas both confirming this on camera. Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez is not really the congresswoman of New York's 14th congressional district. She's essentially an actress. She's merely playing the part of a New York congresswoman. I know this sounds crazy, but bear with me. In 2017, a group called the Justice Democrats held auditions for potential congressional candidates they would run on their platform for various congressional seats throughout the country. AOC's brother, Gabriel, submitted her for the role. In 2017, Justice Democrats, a progressive PAC founded by former Bernie Sanders staffers and allies, put out a public call for congressional candidates. They received over 10,000 nominations. AOC's brother, Gabriel Ocasio-Cortez, submitted her name. AOC was working as a bartender. Justice Democrats vetted nominees and chose AOC. They then trained her and installed her to be their candidate. And this is video just saying the same thing. But if I get trouble with YouTube, whatever. I get more views on Rumble. Brian Cates says, now get this. You don't understand what's about to happen. When elections are shown to have been rigged and fortified for decades, the entire game changes. No civil war, no vigilante movement, clean swift. And he's responding to Angel Arwen's Soul, who says, bring it. We are done effing around waiting for the Democrats to steal control of this country. Citizen vigilante syndrome is about to go nationwide. Now, I watch a lot of superhero movies, or I used to before they went woke. I've been kind of interested in Batman for a while because he's the quintessential citizen vigilante. I've been listening to the old radio programs of the Shadow, and I think, what would it take for ordinary citizens to fight crime and corruption the way militias did in the old days? And I'm thinking, the YouTube channel Dirty Civilian goes on about this, talk about how terrorists organize and how the American colonists organized during the Revolutionary War, and how we've lost a lot of that due to internet surveillance. But the best thing we can do right now is just trust in God the same way the founding fathers did. I mean, one of their original flags was labeled an appeal to heaven, which they flew on their ships. I mean, the founding fathers knew they had no chance against the British Empire unless they had help from above, from God and the heavenly host. So, and there were plenty of instances in the Revolutionary War where there seemed to be divine intervention. And President Washington, his first act as the first president was to go to the church in New York City and pray for 4 hours, dedicating America to the God revealed in the Bible. That was his first official act as president, as first president. So there you go. And the Declaration of Independence refers to God at least 3 times. Now, to drive home the point that the White Hats probably have things under control and are being helped by Almighty God, they just pulled off a genius move against Gavin Newsom in California and the whole, Democrat fifth column in the U.S. Awakened Outlaw posts, if you think you're surprised, just imagine how gobsmacked Gavin was when he found out. The greasy bastard is so cooked. He's talking about the fact that one of his staffers wore a wire and got dirt on him by the FBI. And Colonel Tanner Watkins responds to saying, we were watching a nationwide Operation Greylord. This just prompted a nationwide panic of everyone. There will be an immediate nationwide clusterfuck of every traitor's camp to find the spy in their camp. This is exactly what the CIA did to the Soviets and caused millions to be slaughtered in the USSR. So she's referring to Operation Greylord. That's not the same as the operation in the USSR. This is like an FBI operation where they found corruption in Chicago. But yeah, Brian Kay says, some of you are going, Operation Greylord, what's that? Well, here you go. Grok says, Operation Greylord was a major FBI-led undercover investigation in the 1980s into widespread corruption in Cook County, Illinois, court system, primarily Chicago. So there you go. By exposing one undercover rat, now the deep state is panicked and looking for rats everywhere, and they're gonna wreck themselves. Now, to further this, we have Signalgate, and Data Republican talks about this. I'll translate this message from the infamous Signalgate admin Moss, also known as Fugu. Let me translate. Communists have a critical weakness. In all their solidarity rhetoric, they psychologically cannot handle the existence of opposing opinions, let alone spies. Just one person infiltrating breaks down all their trust and operations. If that doesn't restore your agency and motivate you, I don't know what will. And she's responding to a long post here, and That text is tiny. I'm not going to read all of it. We don't have time for that, but what I believe here is a screenshot from the Signal app where a lot of these Antifa and anti-ICE protests are being organized. And I mean, that's another thing. That's one reason I don't bother with trying to be anonymous online, because it's all out there. If you buy anything, if you pay for anything online, if you accept money from your like YouTube super chats or affiliate marketing, someone has your bank information. And that bank account has your name on it, unless you go through the trouble of setting up like some LLC under a different name. But then that LLC has to transmit your money to your personal bank account. So there you go. I mean, there are a lot of creators who I respect who are anonymous, but they're not really anonymous. I mean, if the Swiss bank cannot hide their money trail, what chance do I have? But let's get going here. All roads will lead back to Obama. He was a Manchurian candidate installed to bring the downfall of America. Yeah, I'm not sure Obama was even elected fair and square at this date. So let's expand this. Consider how Trump, who had been seen as a moderate Democrat or independent, rhetorically anchored himself to the Republican Party in 2012. He made a big ordeal out of Obama's false birth certificate. Scott Adams long ago remarked that Trump did this to intentionally associate himself with a more fringe right-wing theory so the public would see him as a Republican contender. It was also controversial and made headlines. I think it was about more than the power of persuasion. Trump knew that back in 2012, and probably earlier, that Obama represented what he was hired to do. Trump was also a longtime critic of the establishment GOP, which helped his credibility greatly in 2016. Obama is a uniquely evil figure in America's history, as he was specifically installed to destroy America through the Third World Communist uprising Trump is hitting at and crushing. I don't know what the final gambit is, but I can assume it goes back to Obama. And he's responding to Trump posting on Truth Social. Trump is responding to the communist sweep in New York. The communists are finally making the move. I've been waiting and preparing for this for a long time. It's easy to be a communist. All you have to do is say, I'll give you everything. But that means you're taking away from others who have earned it. Over thousands of years, that ideology has not worked once. The game is on. Enjoy watching President Donald J. Trump. So, the game is on. The game is afoot. Now, let's listen to this. Clandestine posts this video saying, did you catch that? Trump says that Obama went to their side, referring to Iran, and then catches himself before he reveals some information about Obama that he's not supposed to say yet, and then says, let's save that for another time. Let's listen to the video.
But if you look, for 47 years, they've been tapping people along, presidents. Every president got tapped along, didn't do anything, and they became more and more powerful. This should have been done 47 years ago. Shouldn't have been allowed to start. But Clinton let him go, and Bush let him go. Everybody let him go, and Obama was the worst of all because Obama actually went to their side. Obama, because, you know, he's a, well, let's not say, let's leave that for another time. He was terrible. And he allowed Iran to, but he gave them $1.7 billion in cash, in green cash, put in statues in an airplane and brought to Iran. $1.7 billion. Do you know what that is? Did you ever see $1 million in cash? This is $1.7 billion. It took up an entire Boeing 757, and they flew it to Tehran, and they gave it to people that were waiting at a plane. Can you imagine these people? They never saw money, and now all of a sudden they've got $1.7 billion in cash, and he gave them hundreds of billions of dollars in cash and everything else, and he went to their side, and because of that, they became much more powerful because of Obama. And Biden, who was the vice president, but he probably had nothing to say because he was not such a stupid person. But
okay, so that's another thing I'm thinking about. A lot of the terrorist networks, whether it's Iran or ISIS or Al-Qaeda or Antifa, or a lot of criminal organizations or cartel leaders, They couldn't function without money. If the governments of the world really wanted to, they could stamp out terrorism and crime. It tells me that a lot of these, bad actors are acting with the blessing of the governments of the world. Because governments are the werewolves. Have you ever heard of the werewolf game? It's this, simulation composed by a couple of Russian researchers. And it kind of goes to show whoever has privileged information has advantage over everyone else in the community or in a game. They have power over them. And the government has more information than anyone else. And that's why God is our only hope against tyranny and corruption. But let's read again what Clandis is saying. Trump has been preparing the public for the massive reveal of world-altering information pertaining to Obama and his relationship with Iran. One day, Trump will reveal to the world that Obama is Muslim and a traitor to the United States, who helps supply Iran with the means to obtain nuclear weapons. All roads lead to Obama. And what does Obama lead to? That's going to be interesting. Mike Davis, he's responding to a story about Zohran Mamdani, back to Mamdani. He's kind of doing the same thing as Obama did. Mike Davis is responding to Outnumbered, who says, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani's office is facing backlash over official scheduled a meeting with Iran's UN ambassador. The timing could not have been worse. State Department officials intervened after learning of the plans. Mamdani says the meeting was made in error. So Mamdani says the meeting was made in error, but he was going to meet with Iranian officials who are our wartime enemies. I don't like saying we're at war with Iran because we're not at war with the real Iran. We're at war with the regime the deep state that took over, that cruelly oppresses Iran. But Mike Davis says, it's a federal felony to undermine the United States with foreign governments, especially our enemies with which we are in armed conflict. 18 U.S.C. 953. That's that legal code. It's also a federal felony to conspire to do this. 18 U.S.C. 371. The Department of Justice's National Security Division must investigate, and I'm sure they are. And they have to keep it quiet because they don't want to tip their hands. You keep saying, why doesn't Trump arrest anyone? Well, you can't go public while there's an investigation going on, or else you might tip off the bad guys, and they might flee or they might do something. But we've got proof of Zohran Mamdani aiding and abetting a foreign adversary. How many other Democrats are doing this? That just sets the stage. I mean, Mamdani is so over the top, stupid, and evil. Sometimes I wonder if he's a secret white hat. I mean, putting on a show for us to illustrate just how rotten all the other Democrats are. I mean, I think the same thing about Jasmine Crockett. I mean, some of these people are so bonkers, beggars belief. But now we got to talk about President Trump's public address on Thursday night, July 16th, where he reveals that all the intel that's been declassified on whitehouse.gov about election interference. Now, Insurrection Barbie goes over it in this post. She says, what we have substantiated proof of from the declassified documents, official actions, and corroborated evidence released are highlighted in 2025 2026. 1. China, Communist China, accessed and analyzed U.S. voter registration data in multiple states in 2020. Declassified National Intelligence Council, NICM memo, from January 15, 2020, released by DNI Tulsi Gabbard in 2026, and related reporting confirmed that Chinese intelligence gained access to voter registration data from multiple U.S. states. The memo explicitly flagged vulnerabilities in voter registration databases as easy targets, and noted that adversaries, including China, have the capability to compromise election infrastructure. China used some of this data for public opinion analysis tied to the 2020 election, per April 2020 cyber assessment referenced in declassified materials. This access was not fully disclosed to the public, state election officials, or Congress at the time. 2. Existence and content of the FBI raw intelligence report on fake driver's licenses in 2020. A specific FBI Intelligence Information Report, the IIR, from a confidential human source existed and was distributed to U.S. intelligence agencies on or around August 24th, 2020. The report alleged that the Chinese government was producing and exporting tens of thousands of fraudulent U.S. driver's licenses. These were to use harvested personal data, names, IDs, addresses, from millions of TikTok accounts to enable ineligible Chinese students and CCP sympathizers to cast mail-in ballots for Joe Biden. They don't call him Beijing Biden for nothing. The report's subject line and key claims are now public via declassified materials shared by FBI Director Kash Patel with Senator Chuck Grassley. Proof exists that this raw intelligence report was created and circulated. It has not been corroborated at the scale alleged. No confirmation of tens of thousands of fraudulent ballots cast from the scheme. 3. The report was recalled and internal FBI objections were raised. The FBI recalled the report shortly after the distribution, around September 25th, 2020, and instructed recipient agencies to delete it. Internal FBI emails, declassified and released to Grassley, show the recall was linked to concerns that the reporting would contradict then FBI Director Christopher Wray's recent congressional testimony denying known coordinated foreign voter fraud plots. Some Albany field police personnel objected in writing, with one noting it implied political considerations that conflicted with the FBI's late political mission. Okay. 4. CBP seized thousands of fake U.S. driver's licenses from China and Hong Kong in 2020. I remember in 2020, 2019, thereabouts, there was a lot of public opinion souring on China, not just, over COVID or the Wuhan lab, but things like video games, Hong Kong, the Disney Mulan live action remake. Okay, where was I? Okay. These seizures provided logical investigative leads, referenced in intelligence materials, but were not fully pursued in connection with voting allegations. This is independently corroborated physical evidence of fake document trafficking from China during the relevant period. 5. China conducted influence operations targeting U.S. elections and politics, broader, including 2024. Multiple independent cybersecurity and research firms, such as Graphica, Microsoft, OpenAI, have documented Chinese-linked networks, e.g., for example, Spamouflage, conducting coordinated disinformation, AI-generated content, and influence efforts around the 2024 election. These targeted candidates soaked out in electoral processes and amplified divisive issues. Similar tactics were continued in 2025-2026 on topics like data centers and tariffs. This aligns with long-standing U.S. assessments of PRC influence capabilities. So I'm glad I read all that because it just paints a picture of a communist regime, the most powerful communist regime in the world, interfering with U.S. elections on behalf of Democrats. Democrats are communists. The mask is off. Democrats have really been communists for a long time. It's just they're dropping the pretense, and now we've got an opening to actually go after them as criminals and enemy bins. Now, what are we going to do about this? I'm not saying we should be vigilantes about this, although it's a tempting thought. It's always good to organize as civilians, as concerned citizens. But what we can do is share information with the public and educate your friends and family gently, plant a seed, but go ahead and do what you can. This is going to make it easier for the White Hats and President Trump to do what needs to be done. Now, let's read this by Colonel Tanner Watkins. She says, pay attention. You'll see people posting this shit frequently. The doomers, she says boomers, so I think she means doomers, are telling you no one will be arrested, even though multiple people have been arrested, including James Comey, former FBI director. They also know that there are multiple grand juries in Florida right now. You can't just go out and start arresting people without an indictment from a grand judge or grand jury. You also can't start arresting people when all the basis for the arrest was classified. They are stupid or participating knowingly or unknowingly in an operation to keep people despondent. Pay attention to who is doing this. It's very important to understand the steps in the process of how this worked in the past. So, not everything is like Law and Order, the TV show. This is in Hollywood. This is real life. These things take time. These things take planning. These things take secrecy not to tip off the guilty parties, and they take thorough investigation. They require a chain of custody of evidence. Make sure, what's the purpose of a trial? The trial is to present evidence to the public in order to prevent wrongful punishment. Now, we can do a lot of this with a free speech online platform like Rumble or X, but we also have to acknowledge that the government has information we don't. President Trump has intel we don't. I don't like saying it. I don't like admitting it. I mean, whoever has most information, has the most secrets, has the advantage. I mean, Sun Tzu wrote about it, and Trump is a disciple of Sun Tzu. So, we're going to close with this. Joe Lang in Clandestine, reiterating Colonel Tanner Watkins' point. Let's read Clandestine's post first. For the people saying we don't need more documents, we need arrests. If you are awake and you know about the fraud in 2020, the documents are not for you. They're for the people who been denying the truth. For the normies. They're the ones who need convincing. We must release the proof before we arrest the traitors. We must make a case for the American people before we drop the hammer. Why? Optics. The public must understand why Trump has to arrest the high-profile politicians that the public have been conditioned to worship before we arrest them. Otherwise, there will be massive backlash and widespread violence. That's why all this declassification is happening before the arrests. What do you think would happen if Trump just arrested Obama or Hillary right now, or at any point over the last 10 years? How do you think that would go? The streets would be in flames in every city in America. We've seen that already. We've gotten a taste of it with the BLM riots in 2020. We've gotten that with the Renee Good riots in Minneapolis. We've already seen riots. Now extrapolate that. Imagine that in every major city across the country, with the full backing of the foreign militia that Biden imported over during his occupation. That's why all this declassification is happening before the arrests. What do you think would happen if Trump just arrested? How do you think that would go? The streets would be inflamed in every city in America, and it would be extremely messy. Mass chaos and civilian casualties. The situation is extremely delicate and must be done surgically. If you don't like it, that's too damn bad, because that's how it's going to be. Declass first, arrest later. Patience. President Trump and the White Hats are defusing a bomb, to put it another way. And Joe Lang responds to saying, exactly right. Everything must be done legally. Most people still have to be shown everything. You can't just tell them. And the reason why you show the people the evidence first is so the entire population demands change to prevent it from ever happening again. This is not just about a mass arrests. It's also putting in place the many legal safeguards to prevent this corruption and treason in the future, to ensure the power being returned to the people remains with the people, to protect the Constitution and prevent another two-tier justice system. Trump is looking far into the future and protecting the generations to come, not just trying to satisfy the desires of the current generation. The government derives its power from the consent of the people. The government is no longer guarding and preserving our rights. When the government is no longer guarding and preserving our rights, then we have a right to force change. After a long trail of abuses and usurpations we have suffered, we now have the right and duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for our future security. That comes in the Declaration of Independence. That's why Trump is already in the process of establishing new safeguards for our future security, a renewed American Revolution. So, I'm going to wrap it up there. Now, if you want to see what I think are going to be the new safeguards, go ahead and pre-order my book, Marion Riffman. It's set in the future. It's set in a world of AI and advanced tech. It's not a cyberpunk novel. It's not a cyberpunk content because it's not dystopian. It's a very hopeful vision of the future. Although there is a lot of crime and corruption going on. A lot of crime hidden under the surface. But a lot of good things that are happening too. I'm getting inspiration. A lot of the best sci-fi is actually very hopeful. You got Star Trek, you got Star Wars, very good stuff. And I want to do that to help the culture along, to inspire the culture. So I resolved to get at it. I've been working on this novel for 6 years, and I've only barely started actually writing the content. I've got an outline, and I'm battling ADHD, and ADHD is not simply an excuse. It really is a disability and a condition. And I've also been juggling different side hustles and ways to pay my bills while I do this. But we're all trying to get ahead. We're all trying to succeed independently from the man, from your obnoxious bosses, from the tax man, and I want to offer a vision of something better. So, with that, I'm going to let you go. This is Nate Houseman letting you know, more than ever, it's okay to stand up for yourself. Over and out.